But I will that you know that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the woman's head, and God is Christ's head. For the man was not created for the woman's sake, but the woman for the man's sake.
At the start of the 17th century, the accepted social and religious belief throughout the world was that women were inferior to men. Puritan men and religious leaders deeply mistrusted women, considering them daughters of Eve, and therefore greedy for both power and sexual gratification. The Salem witchcraft trials began in 1692, when 2 young girls were accused of being bewitched. Hysteria quickly swept the colony. The colony's royal governor, William Phips, created a new court to hear the witchcraft cases. Over 100 people were accused of being witches or wizards. 20 of them were executed, and 4 more died in prison. 16 were women. Then, in a really odd twist of fate, the harshness of colonial life opened a door for women. If a male settler died, which happened frequently, his wife was allowed to manage his property and provide for their children's welfare. Out of necessity, they demonstrated that women could be independent and survive. Most of these unheralded female heroes of America's early colonies remain unknown. 2 women who took advantage of this newfound independence emerging in the Massachusetts Bay Colony were Anne Hutchinson and Anne Bradstreet. Anne Hutchinson was born in England in 1591. In 1612, she married William Hutchinson, and 22 years later, in 1634, she and her husband immigrated to New England. Anne was a brilliant thinker, learned in the Bible and theology. After arriving in the colony, she began holding prayer meetings in her home. Soon, hundreds of men and women attended these meetings. It was during these meetings that Hutchinson expressed her breakthrough in religious thinking. She denied that conformity with the religious laws was a sign of godliness, and insisted that true godliness came from an inner experience of the Holy Spirit. But her own Puritan church leaders thought her ideas heretical. She was tried and banished from the community. In 1637, Hutchinson and about 60 followers went south into Rhode Island, which later became a center for religious tolerance in the colonies. Anne Hutchinson's courage helped open the door for later women to embrace an American independence spirit. One of these women was Anne Bradstreet. Like Anne Hutchinson, Bradstreet was born in England. Well-read and educated, she arrived at Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630 as an 18-year-old newlywed. Anne discovered life in New England was simple and rewarding. Soon she began writing poetry that reflected the change in colonial women as they began to embrace their destiny to become new, independent American women. This change was expressed in her poem on Queen Elizabeth.
Now say, have women worth, or have they none? Or had they some, but with our queen is it gone? Nay, masculines, you have taxed us long, but she, though dead, will vindicate our wrong. Let such as say our sex is void of reason know 'tis a slander now, but once was treason. Anne Bradstreet.
When her first volume of poetry, The 10th Muse Lately Sprung Up in America by a Gentlewoman of Those Parts, was published in London in 1650, Bradstreet became America's first poet. Anne Bradstreet died in 1672 in Andover, Massachusetts.
One of her poems, or one of the stanzas of the prologue, really captures it. She says, "I am obnoxious to each carping tongue who says my hand a needle better fits. A poet's pen all scorn I should thus wrong. For such despite they cast on women's wits. If what I do prove well, it won't advance. They'll say it's stolen, or else it was by chance." She's saying to her readers, very carefully in that poem, that if her poetry is good, those who read it will say, how could a woman have done this? And several men in her community wrote testimonials that this was actually her poetry. They'll say it's stolen, or else it was an accident, it was by chance. And Bradstreet was to prove them wrong. The first edition came out in 1650. In 1678, 6 years after her death, the second edition came out with substantially new material, much of it her best work, personal poetry of her experience as a mother, as a woman in the colonies, as a woman who faced a frontier environment and settled herself in it. She gives voice to a woman's experience from the very beginning of white women's settlement in North America.